I still remember that night, a sweltering summer night in the suburbs of Georgia, where darkness swallowed the vast garden behind my house. The tall trees swayed gently in the faint breeze, but the tranquility didn't last long. My friends and I had decided to camp outside, a familiar pastime, yet this time, something felt different, an ominous sensation creeping into my skin the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. When our game of hide-and-seek began, I crept deeper into the garden, searching for the perfect hiding spot. That was when I saw him. A tall figure stood motionless among the trees, completely unrelated to our game. He didn't move, didn't make a sound. There was nothing to suggest he was just a passerby. Something about his presence sent a chill racing down my spine. I turned and sprinted back toward the tent, where the dim glow of our flashlight still flickered. I wanted to believe I had imagined it, but the feeling of being watched never left me. As night fell, we crawled into our tent, the familiar hum of insects filling the air like a constant, droning lullaby. I closed my eyes, trying to drift into sleep, but then I heard it, a faint, deliberate footstep brushing against the earth. Then came the sound of a zipper being pulled. I froze. No one in our group had left the tent. No one. The fabric of the tent shifted slightly. I could feel someone standing just outside. Their breathing was heavy, slow, savoring our fear. Suddenly, a hand slithered inside, brushing against my ankle. The icy touch of its skin sent a paralyzing shock through me. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked up, strangled by sheer terror. He wasn't in a hurry. He just touched, gripped, as if testing the prey before making his move. The silence shattered with my scream. The hand recoiled, and hurried footsteps vanished into the night. Then, another set of footsteps, firm, determined. My father burst out of the house, flashlight in hand, its beam cutting through the emptiness. There was nothing. No trace of the intruder, as if he had never existed. The police arrived, sweeping through every corner of the garden, but they found nothing except a single deep footprint in the damp soil. No one knew who he was, where he had come from. But I knew he had been there watching, waiting. And perhaps he still was, lurking somewhere in the shadows, patiently awaiting another chance to return. When night fell, 3 young friends gathered in a small house deep in the forest. The air was fresh, and the sound of insects chirping created a peaceful atmosphere. They decided to take a walk under the moonlight, unaware that this walk would lead them into a terrifying nightmare. After walking for a while, they noticed a figure standing silently at the edge of the trail. It was a man, his body covered in tattered, mud-stained clothes. A nauseating stench filled the air, a foul odor like a decaying corpse. He did not move, did not speak, just stood there, seemingly watching them. A deep sense of unease crept over them, and they quickly turned back toward the house. But as they reached the door, a rustling sound came from behind. When they turned around, they saw him moving closer, his footsteps heavy yet deliberate. Panic surged through them. They rushed inside, locked the door tightly, and turned off all the lights. That night, sleep came to them in uneasy fragments. But in the dead of night, a cold wind slipped through the window cracks. With it, the stench grew stronger, suffocating. One of them dared to open their eyes and peek outside, and immediately froze in fear. He was standing there, just at the edge of the forest, shirtless, his pale skin illuminated by the moonlight, his unblinking eyes staring straight into the house. Time stood still. A chilling dread seeped into their bones. And then, the stench became overpowering. The silence shattered with the soft creaking of wooden floorboards inside the house. A bare foot slid across the floor, darkness cloaking his form. He had been inside all along. Breath hitched. Heartbeats pounded in their chests. No one dared to move. And then, a faint hissing sound came from the corner of the room. He was there, just a few steps away. like a predator, waiting for its prey to panic and make a mistake. A scream tore through the night. They bolted, crashing into the door before flinging it open. They ran, tearing across the dark yard, never daring to look back. Behind them, a dry, distorted laugh echoed through the darkness. The next morning, the police found them, still trembling in terror. When they returned to the house, everything remained untouched, except for a single bare footprint pressed deep into the wooden floor and a wide-open window. The man was never found. But deep in the forest, the police discovered a rotting shack. Inside were 5 decayed skeletons. The unlucky ones who came before them, perhaps, just as unsuspecting as they had been. I moved into a small wooden cabin deep in the remote forests of Oregon to escape the noisy rhythm of life. The cabin belonged to a distant relative, abandoned for years but still sturdy. No neighbors, no noise, just me and nature. That was what I wanted. But I soon realized I was not truly alone. On my first day, I discovered a narrow, almost overgrown path leading to an old house with a grayish-brown tiled roof and dark, empty windows. Outside, glass jars filled with dried plants were neatly arranged on the windowsill. Someone had lived here once, but everything was covered in dust, abandoned in an unsettling way. That evening, as the rain began to pour, I heard knocking at the door. A dry, urgent sound. When I opened it, the outside was pitch black. No one was there. Only the trees, trembling in the wind. I closed the door, trying to reassure myself. Perhaps it was just the wind pushing the branches against the walls. But as I turned back to the living room, a trail of water stretched from the doorway, deep into the house. Someone had come in. In the following days, I constantly felt watched. The rustling leaves on my porch at night, faint footprints in the muddy ground outside my door in the morning. Then, I began to see a shadow among the trees. A small figure, standing motionless in the darkness. That night, as I tended the fire, a sound echoed outside. The shadow was no longer distant. It moved closer, gradually emerging in the flickering light. An old woman, dressed in tattered clothing, her silver hair tangled and wild. She stood just a few steps from the window, staring at me. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I felt her gaze. Cold. Empty. I rushed to grab the old hunting rifle hanging on the wall, but when I turned back, she was gone. Only a cold wind swept against the glass. I locked the door, backing into a corner, gripping the gun tightly, waiting. But nothing happened. The next morning, I decided to investigate the abandoned house. Pushing through the overgrown bushes, I opened the door and stepped inside. In the dimly lit room, on a dust-covered wall, I saw old photographs. A woman with silver hair. Hollow eyes. It was her. A sound echoed behind me. I turned around. No one was there. But the door had shut.